All right, welcome back to my channel, True Crime Fans. I'm your host, Tim Sahlberg, and today we are going to bring you volume 2 of the 5-minute novel, aka short stories. And just as a reminder, these stories have been completely generated in Chat GPT, utilizing the prompts that we are putting in. Same with the pictures. We are using full AI to try to do a picture collage that matches the story the best that we can. This week, we will host Alexia Tyler, who is going to tell 2 of the stories, and I will tell the 3rd story. So for the next 15 minutes or so, take a seat, get your favorite drink, maybe get some popcorn, tune in, turn up, and enjoy.
This is Alexia Tyler, bringing you 3 more AI-generated stories. This week, we're focusing on drug-related stories, so let's get into it. Our first story is called Turbulent Transactions. In a dimly lit airport parking lot, a tense exchange was about to take place. Paul, a seemingly upstanding citizen with a shadowy past, stood nervously, his heart pounding as he awaited the arrival of the notorious drug dealer known as Snake. The hushed whispers of the transaction about to take place hung heavy in the air. As the clock ticked closer to the appointed time, a sleek black car rolled in, its engine purring like a beast ready to strike. Snake, a figure cloaked in mystery, emerged from the driver's seat, his calculating eyes locking onto Paul. The 2 men exchanged cautious glances, the weight of their illicit business hanging over them. Paul, determined to ensure his own success in life, had agreed to provide crucial information about Snake's rivals in exchange for his own immunity in the event of a gang war. The airport, a neutral ground, was chosen as the meeting place to provide the semblance of security. However, the tension was palpable, as both parties knew that trust was a fragile commodity in their world. The conversation that followed was a dance of thinly veiled threats and whispered confessions. Paul divulged the names and locations of Snake's competitors, providing details that only an insider could possess. In return, Snake produced a duffel bag filled with bricks of cocaine, the very merchandise that fueled the violent clashes between rival factions. Just as the transaction seemed to be concluding, a distant sound shattered the silence, the unmistakable wail of sirens. Panic seized both men as blue and red lights flickered in the distance, drawing closer with each passing second. It was a drug bust orchestrated by law enforcement, and Paul had been working as an informant all along. In a frenzied scramble, Snake grabbed the duffel bag, eyes wild with desperation. He glared at Paul, betrayal etched across his face, and lunged for his car. But before he could make his escape, the airport parking lot was flooded with police officers, weapons drawn and commands shouted. Amid the chaos, shots rang out. A bullet grazed Paul's arm as he dove for cover, his heart racing with fear and adrenaline. In the midst of the crossfire, Snake met his end, the weight of his criminal empire finally catching up to him. As the smoke cleared, Paul emerged from his hiding spot, shaken but alive. The airport, once a backdrop for clandestine deals and dangerous secrets, was transformed into a crime scene. As investigators pieced together the events of that fateful night, Paul's testimony proved instrumental in dismantling Snake's drug empire and bringing his associates to justice. The story of a drug deal gone wrong at the airport would go down in criminal history, a cautionary tale of betrayal and ambition. That is not where this story ends. For Paul, it would mark the beginning of a new chapter, one in which he would betray everyone he knew and take the chance to flee all of the pressures that had been building up in his life. In the aftermath of the shootout at the airport, the investigation deepened, revealing many connections and rivalries that stretched far beyond the parking lot. Paul's role as an informant had set off a chain reaction, leading to the unraveling of criminal networks that had long evaded the grasp of the law. As detectives sifted through the evidence and interviewed witnesses, Paul found himself caught in the crosshairs of danger once again. His decision to cooperate with authorities had earned him numerous enemies within the criminal underworld, and a shadow seemed to follow his every move. Threatening message arrived. Cryptic warnings scrawled on torn pieces of paper slipped under his door. Cars following him around town, his house robbed multiple times, and much, much more. Haunted by the repercussions of his actions, Paul's paranoia grew. He questioned every stranger's gaze, every passing car that slowed near his apartment. The fear of retribution gnawed at him, a constant reminder that the past was not so easily left behind. In a surprising twist, Paul discovered an unexpected ally, an undercover agent who had been monitoring Snake's operation for years. With a hardened demeanor and a resume of deception, Agent Martinez extended a lifeline to Paul, offering protection and a chance to assist in furthering the dismantling of the criminal empire that still thrived in the shadows. Paul's days were now a blend of secrecy and calculated moves. Working closely with Agent Martinez, he fed information to law enforcement about the remaining players in Snake's network, ensuring that justice would be served for those who had suffered at the hands of the drug trade. But with each successful operation, Paul's anxiety intensified. He knew that the criminals he was helping to apprehend had long memories. The final confrontation loomed, as Paul and Agent Martinez tracked down the elusive leader of Snake's rival faction. The showdown took place in an abandoned apartment complex on the outskirts of the city, a gritty backdrop that mirrored the darkness that had enveloped all of their lives. Amidst the dim lighting and tense silence, a fierce firefight erupted. Bullets whizzed through the air, punctuating the echoes of shouted orders. In the chaos, Paul found himself face to face with the rival leader, a man hardened by years of violence. But this time, it was different. With Agent Martinez at his side, Paul's courage surged, and a sense of purpose washed away the fear that had such a tight hold on him for so long. The battle reached its climax, and the rival leader was apprehended, his empire crumbling around him just as Snake's had. But Paul was nowhere to be found. As the police arrived to secure the scene, his body was found, with 8 bullets nestled deep in his chest. With no family or friends to speak of, Agent Martinez was the only soul left to mourn him. Paul's story is a cautionary tale. What goes around must come back around.
We have ties of betrayal. In the heart of bustling city of West Eden, Sophia Christensen, a seemingly ordinary woman in her mid-30s, led a double life that few could fathom. By day, she worked as a nurse in a local hospital, tending to patients with care and compassion. By night, she was entangled in the dark underbelly of the city's most notorious drug cartel. Sophia's involvement began innocently, driven by desperation to provide for her ailing mother and younger siblings. Despite her medical job, her income barely covered their basic needs. Introduced to the cartel by an old acquaintance, Lewis, Sophia found herself drawn into the world of danger and deceit. Her role initially consisted of minor duties, passing discreet messages, transporting small packages, and other menial tasks. The cartel saw her as an inconspicuous figure, one who wouldn't raise suspicion. However, as time passed, Sophia's involvement deepened. She became entangled in drug trafficking operations, helping move illicit substances across borders, using her medical knowledge to hide drugs with seemingly medical supplies. Maria's dual life weighed heavily on her conscience. She knew the dangers she faced, not just from law enforcement, but within the cartel itself. The ruthless nature of the organization became evident as betrayals led to disappearances and violent retribution. Maria felt trapped, unable to escape the clutches of the criminal world she had become a part of. As law enforcement agencies began to close in on the cartel's operations, Sophia found herself torn between the loyalty she felt to her family and the fear of the consequences she might face if she cooperated with authorities. The lines between right and wrong blurred, and Maria grappled with the moral dilemma of her choices. Things take a dramatic turn when Sophia's younger sister, Isabel, accidentally stumbles upon evidence of her sister's involvement in the cartel. Shocked and horrified, Isabella faced a difficult decision of her own. Should she turn Sophia in to the authorities, or could she help her sister escape the dangerous world she had fallen into in other ways? As the investigation intensified and the cartel's grip tightened, the two sisters found themselves in a race against time. As pressure mounted from both sides, the cartel's increasing demands and the tightening noose of the law, the two sisters devised a daring plan to extricate Sophia from the dangerous web she had found herself caught in. Using Sophia's knowledge of the hospital's routines, the sisters managed to acquire the medical supplies needed for the cartel's operations while discreetly alerting law enforcement about the upcoming drug shipment. This risky gambit put them in a precarious position as they played a dangerous game of double crossing. As the fateful night arrived, tensions escalated. The hospital's corridors turned into a battleground of secrecy, with Sophia and Isabel navigating the fine line between staying true to the cartel's expectations and cooperating with the authorities. Unexpectedly, Louis, the old acquaintance who had initially introduced Sophia to the cartel, sensed something amiss. The climax unfolded at the secluded warehouse where the drug exchange was supposed to take place. Sophia's heart raced as she faced Louis, torn between the loyalty she once felt towards him and the need to save herself and her sister, Isabella. On the other hand, found herself face to face with a stem of law enforcement officers, trembling with fear over the betrayal that would ultimately dismantle the cartel. Amidst a tense standoff between law enforcement and the cartel's enforcers, a series of gunshots rang out, sending shockwaves through the air. The scene turned chaotic with bullets flying and alliances shifting. In the midst of the chaos, Sophia and Isabel seized the opportunity to break free, escaping into the night with evidence that could bring the cartel down once and for all. The aftermath of their escape led to a gripping trial where Sophia and Isabella's testimonies became pivotal in dismantling a cartel's operation. The sisters faced immense challenges in rebuilding new lives under witness protection, haunted by the choices they had made and the dangers they had endured. The sisters will spend the rest of their lives looking over their shoulder, wondering every time they get into the car, when they turn that car on, is it going to explode? When they go to sleep at night, will somebody show up at their house and come through the door and find the sisters for revenge of the cartel? Ties of Betrayal serves as a gripping exploration of the complexities of human nature, the blurred lines between right and wrong, and the lengths one can go to protect their family while seeking redemption from their past mistakes. Up next will be story number 3, featuring Alexia Tyler.
All right, and for our last story, we have something a little different. I wrote this with the help of Chat GPT, so it is about 50-50 between me and Chat GPT, so we'll see how this one goes. The trees know your secrets. There is a forest near the small town of Appleton that isn't as peaceful or serene as it looks. The trees in this forest hide many secrets and are well accustomed to violence and deceit. The forest's hidden pockets and tangled foliage became a sanctuary for Sarah and Michael, a brother and sister duo, where they built their covert drug operation. They catered to a clientele desperate for the escape heroin promised. With a bond forged through adversity and a lifetime spent together, they managed to keep their illicit activities well hidden from the prying eyes of law enforcement. Yet, as their business grew, so did the shadow cast by a nearby gang. Dominic, a cunning and power-hungry figure, led a small-time criminal organization that held a monopoly over the area. He kept a watchful eye over the siblings and saw potential in their newly thriving ventures. Dominic tracked the siblings down and found them in one of the many clearings in the forest. He offered them a deal. They could shut down their operations, or they could continue selling the heroin they made in the forest, but under him, and it came at a cost. Dominic wanted 60% of all of their earnings. Defiant in the face of Dominic's encroachment, Sarah and Michael refused to yield. The forest, once a haven of tranquility, quickly transformed into a battleground of bloodshed, where survival meant embracing only the darkest parts of human nature. The siblings, though not unscathed, make it out alive, just on the other side of the clearing, the air thick with the scent of blood and the palpable tension of what was to come for the siblings. They knew they had to come up with a plan, and quickly, or the next time they might not make it out at all. Meanwhile, in the clearing, Dominic's rage grew, and he ordered his crew back to home base. Amongst the crew was a woman, Nora, who, unbeknownst to those around her, had infiltrated Dominic's gang as an undercover cop. The gang had its fingers in various criminal enterprises, from arms smuggling to money laundering, and they had set their sights on expanding their drug trade into the lucrative woodland market. Nora had initially entered to uncover the secrets of their arms trade, but she knew that she would never get that far if the newfound violence between the siblings and the gang weren't resolved quickly. She knew Dominic would not give up so easily. Nora then decided to find Sarah and Michael herself to convince them to leave the area. She knew they could be dealt with after Dominic's gang had been brought to justice. However, what came next was unexpected to her. After a long back and forth with the siblings, she realized two very pivotal things. The siblings were not going to leave the forest they called home, and she quite enjoyed their company. She enjoyed their company so much she broke the number one rule: never reveal your true identity. Not wanting to leave her new friends behind, she went against her better judgment and decided to help them bring down Dominic, in return for them leaving their old life behind and turning to a life on the right side of the law. Though wary, Sarah and Michael felt they had no choice but to rely on Nora to eradicate Dominic. They knew at this point their lives were on the line, and that was far more important than any money they would potentially make. So together, the three began to formulate a plan to put him behind bars. The true details of the plan were heard only by Nora, Sarah, Michael, and the trees. Nora knew she was meant to wait longer and discover more about the arms trade. However, she felt she could implicate Dominic in a number of crimes with just the evidence she had already gathered in her short time undercover. But one thing remains. Things went awry quickly. Nora returned to the gang shortly after her third meeting with the siblings, ready to execute their plan, but she had to wait until just the right moment. Days passed without any change, business as usual for everyone involved, until finally Dominic had slipped up and had attended a large arms deal with another gang. Nora knew this was her chance and quickly called for backup. Soon they were surrounded on all sides by law enforcement. Nora and Dominic were thrown into a gritty struggle as she kicked his gun out of his hand. He was much bigger than her, but she fought as hard as possible, grasping at him anywhere she could. However, they didn't struggle for long, as her backup came to the rescue and apprehended Dominic. She knew, though, that it wasn't over yet. In the many weeks after the drug bust, a lengthy trial ensued, and eventually Dominic was charged with multiple crimes and sent to prison, where he would likely remain for the rest of his life. In that time, his entire gang had been either captured or killed. His power outside of the prison greatly diminished. But Dominic had many informants in the prison, unrelated to his gang, and found out that Nora had teamed up with Sarah and Michael to take him down. Though he could not do anything to physically harm them, given the circumstances, he did the second best thing he could think of. He revealed the details of their heroin dealings in exchange for a more favorable sentencing. Nora had not cleared the meeting with Sarah and Michael with her higher-ups, and as soon as they heard of her disregarding orders, she was fired. No longer being able to help her new friends, she was racked with guilt. She was the one that suggested putting Dominic in prison, and now the siblings would stand trial because of her actions. Sarah and Michael's trial was a swift one, both of them having multiple prior drug charges. The judge showed little mercy, and the siblings were charged with sale and possession of illicit narcotics and received a sentence of 25 years. Upon hearing this news, Nora was distraught. Guilt washed over her once again. She could never bring herself to face Sarah and Michael in prison. She knew she couldn't do anything more, for better or worse, and decided to change her life completely. She moved across the country, changed her name, and began working in a drug rehab center, dedicating her life to helping people recover from their addictions. The Trees Know Your Secrets is a story where one decision changes the entire outcome. A perfect example of the butterfly effect.